were a loving couple, leading a quirky lifestyle.
She always referred to herself as a good witch.
I mean, they were just different. You know what I mean?
They really loved each other. And you could see it.
Did their peculiar passions trigger a deadly desire?
When we moved that deerskin rug, we found a massive pool of blood.
The talk that Sunday night was suicide.
As investigators dig into the case, they unearth a trove of secrets and lies.
The phrase, "don't tell your father," did come up.
You did this to my daughter in my house. You were my friend. How dare you?
This is a 16-year-old kid. He knows what a gunshot sounds like.
He always told me, it's a sickness. I love guns, I have to have them.
May 17th, 2015. It's a quiet Sunday evening in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, a thriving lakeside community due west of Milwaukee. Like most of his neighbors, 40-year-old Donald Hansen is at home, savoring the final few hours of the weekend.
A lot of the houses on that street, particularly the families all knew each other, all certainly were the type to help a neighbor if needed.
And that night, one neighbor would desperately need Donald's help.
Around 6:30 p.m., Amy Van Wagner ran across the street to a neighbor's house, Don Hansen. She was crying. She was pretty hysterical. She didn't say much. It was just, "Stan, he's in the basement."
50-year-old Stan Van Wagner is Amy's husband of over 20 years.
She had said something's wrong with Stan, and that prompted Don Hansen to go over to the house to find out what was going on.
While Amy waits outside, Don enters the Van Wagner residence and heads into the basement.
He goes in the basement and he sees a body wrapped in a tarp.
Donald Hansen's gruesome discovery will trigger a police investigation, the likes of which the town of Oconomowoc has never seen. By all accounts, Stan and Amy Van Wagner seemed to be leading a charmed life. They had raised 3 loving children and had carved out a comfortable living in scenic Oconomowoc. But their story actually starts way back in 1986, when Stan, a Massachusetts native, enlisted in the Army and was deployed to Fort Hood, Texas.
He always liked driving trucks. He always liked, that's why he got into tanks, I think, in the Army. He liked driving that heavy equipment. He was really good at it, too.
While in Fort Hood, Stan met a young woman named Grace. They quickly fell in love. When Stan's military service was complete, he married her and moved to be near her family in Illinois.
Stanley didn't want to come back to Massachusetts. Stanley wanted to be out on his own, doing his own thing, with his own way, and that's pretty much what he did.
While the marriage lasted just a few years, after the divorce, Stan decided to move to Wisconsin for work.
He really liked Wisconsin. The hunting, the fishing, the outdoors, to change the seasons. He just loved it.
In addition to the hunting and fishing, Stan developed an unusual new hobby: taxidermy.
He made some fun stuff, some raccoon hats. He built a deer hide jacket with horns on it on the hood. There was deer hides all over the place.
Stan's friends worried that he'd never get a date with a house full of dead animals. But in the summer of 1991, while driving a truck for a local recycling facility, Stan crossed paths with the plant's 27-year-old secretary, Amy Marie Cherwesnik. Like Stan, Amy had always taken pride in living life on her own terms.
Amy loved the fact that she was born on October 31st. She celebrated Halloween a good chunk of the year. Always referred to herself as a good witch.
What you saw is what you got with Amy. She was very real, very down to earth. You never felt judged by her.
Pretty soon, the amateur taxidermist and good witch hit it off. and in the summer of 1992, they began dating.
We all know Stan and Amy had a dark side, a fun dark side. They didn't stick to the social norms, and they were both okay with that. They made it look so easy and so fun to be free in that respect.
Stanley loved Amy, so my mother said, yes, if it'll make you happy, marry Amy.
In 1993, the couple did just that. And of course, they chose to do it their way, with a Renaissance-themed wedding.
I know they were both very interested in the Renaissance. I have pictures of the Renaissance wedding. It was a beautiful wedding.
It was a very unique wedding. How they dressed and the attire that they wore, it was fun. They were happy.
After tying the knot, the couple moved to a comfortable home near the lake in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. In 1994, Amy gave birth to their first son, who they named Wolfgang. In 1996, they added a daughter, and another son, Thor, came along in 1999.
When the kids were growing up, she was a stay-at-home mom. She wanted to raise those kids. She wanted to take care of the kids.
Amy would stand up from like a mother bear, and she always called herself Mama T-Rex. They couldn't have asked for a better mother.
While Amy stayed home with the kids, Stan worked 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, to make sure his family wanted for nothing.
He was also pretty good at managing money and funds. He knew what was going on and how much, and he made a point of it. He'd sit back there, he'd go through his finances. I don't think I ever saw the guy unemployed. I've seen the guy drive dump trucks. I've seen him suck mud out of ditches. I've seen him chop hundreds of cords of wood. He had a love for family. He would literally do anything for family.
As the children got older, Amy started working outside the home again, eventually landing an office position at a stone company in the nearby town of Sussex. While things were financially stable, Stan and Amy never flaunted what they had.
Stan and Amy, they didn't buy the extravagant things. They made things work.
They didn't have steak and potatoes for dinner every night. They didn't go out for dinner.
Instead, Stan and Amy poured their savings into paying off and redecorating their home in a style that truly fit their personality.
They had a little garage bar. He started decorating the walls. He had medieval swords, tools, battle regalia, shields, little dragons here and there.
The name of the garage, which was actually a bar, was the Dragon Inn.
They were a little less normal than everybody, but they liked it that way. And so did I.
Amy and Stan presided over their many get-togethers like a king and queen of a castle.
When they did have the parties, she'd stand up on a chair and lean across the bar, and he'd lean the other way, and they'd kiss, and people would cheer.
Then, in 2015, Amy and Stan received an unexpected financial windfall.
All of a sudden, she's like, I have this $80,000 inheritance. It was some uncle that had passed and left it to them.
Always wise with their money, Stan and Amy opted to put the lion's share of the inheritance toward paying down their mortgage.
Amy put like $60,000 down on paying off the house. So they only owed like $17,000 on their house. There's not many people nowadays who can say that.
With the house almost paid off, and both he and Amy still working, Stan decided it was high time the couple splurged a little.
Stan went ahead and bought the money for the Corvette. He bought Amy a nice Mustang convertible.
When Stan got the Mustang for Amy, she was ecstatic. She has always wanted one. Stan paid for it in full. That's how much he loved her.
By 2015, their son and daughter were out on their own, and only the youngest child, Thor, was still in the house. It seemed Stan and Amy were well set up for their golden years. And as their 22nd anniversary approached, the couple simply couldn't believe their luck.
I was not only proud of my brother Stan, I was a little jealous of my brother Stan. Stan had what I would assume to be a perfect life.
Or so it seemed. On May 17th, 2015, what neighbor Donald Hansen finds will rip Stan and Amy's picture-perfect life apart at the seams.
He initially just peels back the tarp a little bit and can see that it's Stan Van Wagner. I think anybody would be a little taken aback by what they saw.
First responders arrive within minutes.
They open the tarp to try to see if Stan is alive. He's not. It's cold to the touch, and there's nothing anybody can do. He is deceased.
It was an apparent gunshot injury. The first responding officers could observe that.
Detectives from the Oconomowoc Police Department are called in to secure the scene. As they do so, a terrified Amy looks on in disbelief.
Amy was absolutely in hysterics. Like any wife would be. Your husband's dead, you know?
She was distraught. She was very sad. She was crying. She was, wringing her hands and acting very disturbed about the fact that her husband was dead.
Coming up, as investigators process the scene, questions begin to swirl about what led to Stan's death, and the possibilities seem endless.
Maybe he was selling guns and somebody just murdered him and stole them.
It was very real. We thought this could be a possibility. He did something, he wasn't thinking straight.
As they approached their 22nd wedding anniversary, Stan and Amy Van Wagner had never looked more in love.
Stan and Amy really loved each other, and you could see it. You know, on some couples, you don't see it. You could definitely see it with them.
With only their youngest son, Thor, still in the house, Amy and Stan were just a few months away from becoming empty nesters.
That's why I always thought that my brother Stan had a great life. It should have been retirement time. Relax a little bit. You know, you've earned it. And it just didn't work out.
That's because on May 17th, 2015, Stan Van Wagner's lifeless body was found in the basement of his home, the victim of an apparent gunshot wound. As investigators cordon off the scene, news of Stan's death rips through the quiet lakeside community of Oconomowoc. Within the hour, friends and family have all gathered outside Stan and Amy's home to try and comfort one another.
It's not true, you know what I mean? You just leave your house, you go, not believing. You don't want to believe it.
It slams you right in the gut to hear that your brother's gone, that you're never going to see him again, you're never going to get to talk to him again.
On the front lawn, a bewildered Amy tells investigators what she knows about the events leading up to Stan's death.
She said that the last time she had seen Stan was Friday morning, May 15th. Stan said he was sick. He called into work.
He was laying on the couch in the office, and I just opened the door and said, I gotta go, I'm running late. He said, drive safe, make sure work got my message.
And did he indicate any plans that he had for the day or for...
I thought he would be homesick. I thought he would still be there when I got home.
Amy says that she planned to knock off work early in order to take care of Stan. But when she got home, her husband was nowhere to be found.
He wasn't home. And that's where, and I hadn't even talked to him. He didn't let me know that he felt better or anything.
She thought maybe he was going wood cutting or fishing or something with his friends later in the day. He was very close with his friends, so he spent a lot of time with them.
Amy says she still wasn't alarmed, even when Sunday afternoon rolled around and there was still no word from Stan.
She had said it wasn't unusual that we hadn't seen each other all weekend. It wasn't unusual that we didn't check in with each other. That's just how Stan and I were.
But when Stan failed to show for their regular Sunday dinner, Amy began to worry.
On Sunday, Amy put up a Facebook post saying, flowers planted, dinner is in the oven, just wondering where my husband is. So she says, I go downstairs, and she says, when I went in there, it was difficult for me to open the door, but eventually I got the door open, and I see feet sticking out, blue tarp, and And that's when she runs upstairs over to Don Hansen's house and calls 911.
Amy's like, why did he do this? She was thinking that Stan took his own life.
The talk that Sunday night was suicide. They treated the crime scene initially as a suicide.
But why would Stan Van Wagner, a man who seemed to be leading a charmed life, decide to end it at the point of a gun? That's when Amy makes a startling revelation to police.
Stan got the shingles, and he was very much in pain.
He was so uncomfortable. Always went to work. But, he was miserable.
Amy also reveals that instead of seeking treatment from a doctor, Stan was self-medicating.
He would post photos of a bottle of Jack Daniels, ibuprofen, Benadryl, just a cocktail of medications and alcohol, saying anything so I can sleep.
That was Stan. He was one of those guys, I could fix it.
Had Amy's fears come true? Had a combination of drugs, alcohol, and pain pushed her once happy husband over the edge?
That was unbearable for him. So it was very real. We thought this could be a possibility. He did something, he wasn't thinking straight.
Perhaps that explains why Stan's body was lying on a tarp. As investigators know, it's not unusual for suicide victims to plan ahead. It seems like a plausible theory, until detectives take a closer look at the room where Stan's body was found.
They don't find any bullets. They don't find any bullet casings. There is not a large amount of blood anywhere.
Most importantly, there's no gun.
They moved the body and they were like, oh, whoops. There's no gun here. Kind of hard to shoot yourself without the gun being in the same room.
With no gun to be found, investigators take a closer look at the body.
It wasn't a headshot, wasn't towards the heart. There were bullet holes in his back.
3 bullet holes, to be precise.
It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a suicide. It was a murder.
So you went from trying to process that Stan took his own life to know he was murdered. And now you have a whole new set of emotions. Trying to figure out why, who, when.
So they questioned, is this where he really died? Is this where he was really shot?
Detectives find 2 more clues not far from Stan's body.
They see a pillow. They see a laptop. There's a hole through it. It looked consistent with a bullet hole.
As officers collect the pillow and laptop and tag them as evidence, detectives make their way upstairs.
What we did find is pillows that were the same types were actually in the den. There were matching pillows on the couch in the office. The power cord to the laptop computer was still there, connected to an outlet. There wasn't necessarily a lot of damage in the room. Didn't look like there had been any type of struggle. There wasn't a lot of things out of place.
That's when detectives discover something that does seem out of place. A deerskin rug.
Stan wouldn't put a deerskin on the floor because you walk on the deerskin, it tears the hair out of it. It was decorative. It wouldn't have been on the floor.
When we moved that deerskin rug, we found a massive pool of blood.
We believe there was some effort to disguise the crime scene because of the deerskin rug on the floor.
Investigators also find shell casings and bullet holes in the wall and floor.
Based on that information, we know that Stan Van Wagner was killed in the office. This had to be where Stan had been shot and died.
If that's the case, then who killed Stan Van Wagner? And why?
The patio door hadn't been pushed in. The front door hadn't had any sort of damage to it that would indicate it was forced in. We never located Stan's cell phone.
And initially, that seemed to be the only thing missing, until officers notice a gun safe in the corner of the room.
He asked Amy, are there any guns missing? she did indicate, yes, there are guns missing from that safe.
Among the missing weapons are several rifles, as well as a .380 caliber pistol, the same caliber as the bullet casings found on the floor of the office. When investigators press Amy for more information about Stan's gun collection, she tells them that Stan was an avid sportsman and weapons enthusiast who liked to buy and trade guns on the internet.
He always told me, it's a sickness, Rob. I love guns, I have to have them.
And according to Amy, just prior to his death, Stan had been thinking of selling his .380 pistol. Could Stan have arranged a gun deal on Friday while Amy was at work, only to have it turn deadly?
Maybe he was selling guns and maybe somebody just wanted them and didn't want to pay anything for them and murdered him and stole them.
Coming up, did Stan's love of guns lead to his untimely death? Could a seemingly normal transaction have had tragic consequences?
It's a Craigslist ad somebody responds to. They steal a gun, kill him with it, make off without having to pay a dime.
For 20 years, Stan and Amy Van Wagner had lived life on their own terms. But now, Stan has been found dead in the couple's basement, the victim of a trio of gunshot wounds to the back. With a cache of weapons missing from Stan's gun safe, investigators wonder if Stan had been murdered in a gun deal gone wrong.
Perhaps, it's a Craigslist ad that somebody responds to. They steal a gun, kill him with it, make off without having to pay a dime.
So we did look into Craigslist and other sites where Stan could have been selling a gun. Stan had not sold a gun anytime recently.
With Craigslist a dead end, investigators searched the local classified ads to see if Stan had recently tried to sell his pistol there. Again, they come up empty.
There was nothing in there that showed us Stan was in the process of selling a gun, had done anything recently to sell to somebody.
With no clear proof that Stan had been trying to sell his .380 pistol, investigators turned their attention back to his wife, Amy.
I said, well, Amy, you're going to be the number one suspect. They always start the inner circle and they work their way out from there.
In an interview room, Amy has trouble keeping her grief in check.
I don't have any answers. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't know, what's going on. She's acting like any wife would, whose husband just passed away. Upset, not knowing what to do, not thinking straight, just out of sorts.
Amy eventually composes herself long enough to tell police that Stan's bout with shingles wasn't the only problem the couple had recently been facing. Since starting his sophomore year of high school, Thor, Amy and Stan's 16-year-old son, had been acting out in troubling ways.
One of the things we learned from our investigation is that the son had been suspended from school.
A couple months ago, he was having a problem at school, and I could tell when it got to a bad point, he would totally withdraw, and nobody likes me, and I don't know why I'm still here. He was in trouble, or getting tickets for driving, or loitering, or whatever, it might have been. Stealing. Stan also knew Thor smoked marijuana.
According to Amy, Thor's behavior didn't sit well with her husband at all.
And when Stan found the pot and went completely ballistic, and he went nuts, and he had every right. He went crazy. Drugs in our house. Stan's maybe, I think he got high once in his entire life.
So he's not a real fan.
No, he ex-military, it's illegal,
Okay. You didn't have an excuse for bad behavior. You just had bad behavior. He had no patience for it.
He was extremely upset about it. I know he grounded him. I know he took his computer away. He'd make you feel pretty miserable when he wasn't happy with you.
Amy says the situation had grown even more tense 3 days earlier when Thor was suspended from school.
Stan did have so much pride. And please don't disrespect me. His son was suspended from school on Thursday, and that's a big disrespect.
Could a violent confrontation between Stan and his youngest son be the cause of death?
He was not happy with his father. He was kind of a lost boy at that time.
We learned that Stan Van Wagner kicked their son out. He had changed the locks on the door, and that all occurred during October, during this big fight.
Amy is adamant that Thor could not be involved.
Thor would have turned the gun on himself before he turned it on his dad.
Amy identifies another man as the possible killer. The son of Stan's former best friend, Mark.
The kids referred to him as Uncle Mark, and many nights Uncle Mark stayed over because Stan and Mark were drinking.
But according to Amy, one day in 2011, she was cleaning her teenage daughter's bedroom when a text message popped up on her daughter's phone. It was from Mark.
She's like, why is Uncle Mark writing her? What is he saying? She starts going through the history of text messages and began to shake.
Amy tells police that the text messages revealed that 46-year-old Mark had been engaging in sexual intercourse with her teenage daughter for almost a year. Needless to say, Amy was furious, but her anger paled in comparison to the white-hot rage of her husband.
Stan was ready to go after Mark. I mean, you did this to my daughter in my house. You were my friend. How dare you?
As any dad, he'd go after that son of a bitch and he'd kill him.
According to Amy, cooler heads ultimately prevailed, and Stan and Amy turned Mark into the police. After his arrest, Mark accepted a plea deal, but on the day of his sentencing, Mark stood before the judge and claimed he was the real victim in the case.
He actually had the nerve to say, Your Honor, she was all over me. She was asking, so how was I to not? And it took a lot for all of us to just sit there and listen to that.
Amy says that's when Stan snapped.
During the time when Martin had been sentenced in court, Stan had actually attacked Martin in court.
It was a melee. It was a literal free-for-all in courtroom. We both had about 5 sheriffs piled on him.
Amy says that while the court officers were trying to subdue Stan, Mark's son began shouting threats at him.
His son had threatened to kill Stan right there in the courtroom.
But even with Mark behind bars, she and Stan took the threats from his son seriously, based on his reputation around town.
His son was known to be in a gang in South Milwaukee. Stan had given his kids a vehicle, and the vehicle was spotted around town a few times.
Had Mark's son finally made good on his threat to kill Stan? If so, was Mark the one who put him up to it? Speaking with investigators, the Van Wagner's friends and family certainly think so.
Mark was somebody that initially everybody had brought up that he had someone, his son, a friend, or somebody else, take revenge on Stan.
Investigators pull the visitor log from the prison where Mark is incarcerated.
We looked at phone calls, visiting records. That was really a dead end, essentially. We were able to say, we don't believe you did this. There was nothing there. We did look at the son was working at the time, and we did look to see if he was working on the day that Stan was murdered, and he was. Looked at his cell phone records. He was nowhere near Oconomowoc. We felt comfortable and confident that they had nothing to do with this murder.
With Mark and his son eliminated as possible suspects, detectives turn their attention back to Stan and Amy's 16-year-old son, Thor. During an interview at the station, Thor admits that his relationship with his father had been bumpy as of late.
I think that's what went through a lot of his mind, is that Dad didn't respect or or treat him as good as he expected.
But Thor tells police that he would never want to hurt his dad.
He loved their father. All the children did. Wasn't that he was a bad father?
Even though Thor is adamant he had nothing to do with his dad's murder, investigators aren't so sure.
It was said that Thor was home. He was in the house almost that whole weekend.
If Stan's murdered here within the home, don't you think Thor's gonna notice this?
He's not like a little toddler. This is a 16-year-old kid. He knows what a gunshot sounds like.
According to Thor, he never heard anything out of the ordinary the entire weekend. Coming up, Thor makes a surprising revelation, causing detectives to question everything they know about the investigation, and in the process, shine the spotlight on another member of the Van Wagner family.
Thor was crying.
She's telling everybody else that Mr. Van Wagner stayed home sick from work. That is an inconsistency.
May 20th, 2015. It's now been 3 days since Stan Van Wagner was found dead in his basement. His wife, Amy, initially told detectives that Stan had been home sick on Friday, May 15th. But Stan and Amy's son, Thor, claimed his mother told him just the opposite.
Well, there was a discrepancy there where you're telling the only other person who could be in the house that Stan's at work, but you're telling everybody else outside of that house that Stan is at home sick.
That was another big red flag that went up.
So where was Stan Van Wagner on Friday, May 15th? Investigators send Stan's laptop, which had been shot during the attack, to a forensic expert.
He was able to verify that at the exact time of 3:57 a.m., there was a sudden and unexpected termination of the computer activity.
Could this sudden termination have been from a bullet striking the screen? And if Stan had been shot at precisely 3:57 a.m. on Friday, May 15th, how had he managed to call in sick to work later that morning? Apparently, he didn't. When police visit Stan's work, Stan's boss tells them that on May 15th, 2015, Stan had texted in sick.
Sicker than a dog was the text messages that his boss was getting, which would be my brother's type of language.
According to Stan's boss, the language sounded like Stan, but the method of communication was completely out of character.
My brother's employer was even surprised. My brother never missed work in all the years that he worked there, and he never sent a text message. My brother was not very tech savvy. I don't think my brother knew how to send a text message.
He would have called you and told you. He wasn't one to not do things in person.
So if Stan hadn't sent the text message, then who had? Until investigators can determine the location from which the text message was sent, identifying the sender will be next to impossible.
We cannot prove with 100% certainty who was using the phone.
Investigators subpoena Stan Van Wagner's cell phone records. While they wait for the order to go through, they pay his widow, Amy, another visit. They're hoping to clear up the discrepancy between what Amy told her friends regarding Stan's whereabouts and what she told her son, Thor. However, this time around, Amy isn't quite so cooperative.
She didn't want to talk to the police, they weren't allowed in the house anymore. They had to do things with her lawyer. That's not to say that proves guilt, but it sure doesn't prove innocence. It doesn't look good for you when you do that,
She was very against even talking to the police or doing anything. You'd think you'd want to help them all you can to figure this out. You would think.
With Amy refusing to answer questions, investigators reach out to the Van Wagner's friends and family. And again, they all say the same thing.
Stan and Amy were very happy together. When you were in the house, they're joking around back and forth to each other.
Though friends and family all say Stan and Amy's relationship was still on solid ground, some of them suggest there was a brief period, about a year ago, where the marriage seemed to be in trouble. And it all had to do with finances.
Amy was, what we found, a little bit more free with her money.
Amy had a tendency to run the credit cards up and then get extra credit cards, and there was issues with that.
Friends say that Amy's profligate spending prompted Stan to start keeping a firmer grasp on the family purse strings.
Pretty much, if he stuck his hand in his pocket and he couldn't pay for it, he didn't need it.
They had separate checking accounts, separate finances, and that's because Amy had been accused of being a little looser with her money.
Sometimes he would give Amy some money for groceries and cigarettes or things like that, but he was really the main person who would control the finances in the house.
Amy flaunted breaking Stan's rules on spending money, and would even brag to friends about how she'd open the safe where Stan kept his guns, along with a huge chunk of cash.
She took money from Stan. She knew where the key was to the safe. It was like a joke to her that she could get in there at any time she wanted.
Friends tell police that in October of 2014, Stan discovered that Amy had been stealing money from the safe, and he put the family finances on an even tighter lockdown. He even threatened Amy with divorce.
He would tell Amy, well, you can leave. You know where the door is. This is all mine. This house is mine. Anything under this roof is mine.
All of which made Amy terrified that she'd soon be all alone and completely broke.
Stan was threatening that he was going to take everything.
She really believed that he was going to get everything if he was going to follow through with this, threat of divorce.
Friends also say that during that time, Amy secretly borrowed money from them in an effort to pay down her credit cards and get back into Stan's good graces.
She was borrowing money from family and friends and stuff that she swore she would pay back.
And for a while, it seemed like Amy's plan worked.
They worked through their issues based on what we found out from friends. She essentially said things were resolved.
It seemed to be over in January. Things seemed to be getting better.
Friends say that was about the same time Amy received $80,000 in inheritance money. That's when some of them started calling in their debts.
I told her, I said, money's tight with me. Can you give me the money? Amy's like, yeah, I'll get that money back to you. Not a problem.
But apparently it was a problem. Because even though the inheritance money came from Amy's uncle, Stan insisted on controlling every penny of it.
He said, no, you're not going to just blow it. Instead of just wildly spend it, he kind of told her, hey, you got to put this towards the house. Let's get the house paid down.
Friends tell police that without access to the inheritance money, and with no way to pay back the money she borrowed, Amy began to panic.
All of a sudden, she feels the need. She needs to pay it off.
It was going to cause obvious stress in the marriage, perhaps a divorce, perhaps he would throw her out.
Armed with this new information, police subpoenaed both Amy's cell phone and financial records.
In our case, we were very fortunate that these cell phone records included the content of text messages.
And what those texts show is a cash-strapped woman growing more desperate with every day.
She ran into a wall where she didn't have the money to pay them back.
They had been asking Amy for the money that she borrowed from them. All of this was coming to a head, and Stan was about to find out.
Bank records and ATM surveillance videos also show Amy withdrawing thousands of dollars just hours after Stan's death.
She took this money out of the account, and she went and paid back all these people that she borrowed money from.
This is very serious case. They're obviously going right after you right now.
So, as your friend, get an attorney. And she says, but won't I look guilty? Well, yeah. I said, but you're going to look guilty no matter what.
Coming up, the most damning evidence comes when investigators finally receive Stan Van Wagner's cell phone records.
Stan Van Wagner's cell phone was nowhere near where Amy Van Wagner had said he was.
For over 20 years, Amy and Stan Van Wagner appeared to be living an idyllic life together. But in February 2016, 9 months after Stan was found dead in the couple's home, investigators have pieced together evidence that suggests the eclectic couple's marriage was far from perfect, and that Amy murdered Stan in order to avoid the fallout from her mounting financial problems.
It wasn't necessarily just one thing that we saw where we thought, yes, this has to be Amy. It was everything put together that led us to believe that she is the one who murdered Stan Van Wagner.
I don't think she wanted to deal with the aftermath of having to listen to Stan, tell her, hey, I screwed up, I can't trust you again.
Based on cell phone records, bank statements, and evidence collected from the crime scene, investigators believe that on the night of May 15th, 2015, Amy opened Stan's gun safe, grabbed his .380 pistol, snagged a pillow from the sofa in the den, and crept up behind Stan while he was on his laptop in the family office.
We believe that around 3:57 a.m., Amy comes in and shoots Stan 3 times. The last shot being into his chest while he's on the floor.
She apparently used the pillow to muffle the sound, was what we concluded.
Amy proceeded to drag his body downstairs, wrapped him in a tarp, and left him there till Sunday when she ran hysterically to the neighbor's home.
On February 24th, 2016, detectives issue an arrest warrant for Amy Van Wagner.
Amy's arrest was devastating. I couldn't believe it.
It's my friend. I don't want to believe it. You don't want to ever believe that somebody you knew, you loved, would ever do such a thing, would ever have it in them to do such a thing.
At trial, Amy Van Wagner is found guilty of first-degree murder and is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
When I heard the verdict that she was finally guilty, I just bursted into tears. I was so happy and so relieved.
As Amy is carted off to Techita State Prison, those closest to the quirky couple still can't fathom the senseless nature of the crime.
Whatever got somebody to that point is to take away a husband, father to your children. How do you justify that?
I can't understand it. Amy had to be desperate. Amy had to be at her last straw.
As with money, it wasn't even a whole lot of money. It's just filthy green paper. It doesn't, it's just crazy.
For more information on Snapped, go to oxygen.com. They were high school sweethearts with a devotion to family and country.
We were all proud of him that, hey, my big brother's in the military.
He loved his family. He had a big family. He provided Eugenia with everything she could want.
She ate his heart.
Just when their future looked its brightest, a devastating crime stopped their marriage dead in its tracks.
Police arrived to a very grisly, horrific scene.
I felt as though my heart had been ripped out of my chest.
As detectives hunt for a killer, they discover that there is more to this picture-perfect couple than meets the eye.
There was something going on in the residence that's suspicious. He was actually telling us about an affair.
It was men coming in and out into the house.
The potential suspect pool was quite large.
A phone call, there was a gentleman said that he had some information.
Her house was actually burning to the ground at the time.
She come on to you as sweet as honey, but she is mean as a cobra snake.
October 12th, 2011. Pritchard, Alabama police officer Willie Mabin is in the middle of a patrol shift when dispatch informs him of a troubling call that just came in.
Dispatch contacted me and advised that there was suspicious circumstance at Gorman Lane, and I started heading that way, which was on the north side of the town.
As Officer Mabin arrives at the scene, he's met by a frightened 29-year-old Eugenia Campbell and her sister, Satanya.
Upon arrival on the scene, I spoke with Mrs. Campbell. She was upset,
Eugenia says she had been afraid to enter the home she shares with her 32-year-old husband, Romano.
She stated when she'd arrived home, her husband's trunk was up on the car and the door was open.
She came home and just felt like things were off. It just looked strange.
She knew her husband would have left those items open and unlocked.
They blew the horn, he didn't respond, and then they called the police.
There had been a burglary reported at that house the week before, so she felt the need to call 911 before going inside.
When I arrived on the scene, I noticed the same thing. The trunk was up and the door was open. I advised her to stay out in the vehicle with her sister.
Officer Mabin cautiously enters the home.
Upon entering the residence, I kept calling for Mr. Campbell, and he still didn't respond. I looked around and I saw some shoes on the floor, but they were face up on the floor behind the sofa. I didn't see any blood at the time, but I knew he wasn't responding, and I started EMS to the location.
At that time, we really had no clue as to what really transpired.
We need to pull in additional resources from law enforcement and figure out what we need to do to try and get to the bottom of the crime.
For Romano Campbell, the son of an unwed teen mother, his childhood in South Alabama was one of struggle and survival.
He grew up in a place they called Happy Hill. It was a bad place where it was drugs, it was poverty, it was killing.
Unlike many of his neighborhood peers, Romano refused to succumb to the temptations of the street.
He escaped so many things that he saw growing up. He was a good child. Finished school with over an amount of credits, very intelligent. He just was an athletic person. He played football for 2 years, but track was his love.
He was a big muscle, type guy. He was feared in school, but he was cool. People look at his physique and say, "Oh no, I ain't gonna mess with him."
During high school, Romano met the young woman who would one day become his wife. The spunky, self-assured Eugenia Singleton.
Eugenia and Romano were high school sweethearts.
She's from Pritchard, Alabama, and he met her. She was working at Church's Chicken.
And she was an outgoing person, outside the box, she was just ongoing. I could say that would attract him.
They used to take us to the movies, just used to have fun, that's how, she won me over.
Although Eugenia and Romano were still in love, they decided to split up when high school ended. The following year, Romano enlisted in the Army and began his basic training almost 600 miles away in Fort Knox, Kentucky.
He was a hard worker. He was a dedicated person when it comes to the military. He loved that military.
We were all proud of him that, hey, my big brother's in the military.
Before his deployment to South Korea in the spring of 2002, Romano paid a visit to his family back in Pritchard, where he ran into his old flame.
We saw her in Winn-Dixie, and she had a little boy.
In the years since their breakup, Eugenia had weathered a rocky relationship with another local guy with whom she had a child, but the father didn't stick around.
This is just your average mother who is just trying to make ends meet.
Despite Eugenia's struggles and Romano's impending deployment, the attraction still seemed strong.
We were sitting on the porch one day, and my mom, she loved reading the paper.
And Romano's family was floored when they came across an unexpected wedding announcement.
She said, "You done got married?" So she calls him and asks him, and he said, "Yes, ma'am, I got married."
Over the next few years, Eugenia and Romano added 2 more children to their family and settled into a home on a military base near Savannah, Georgia. The couple couldn't have been happier.
He was a good man, a good father.
Eugenia was living a normal life. She had children, she had a husband who worked hard for the family, and she was working to take care of her family like most women are.
They seem to be doing fine, good, and my son was taking good care of.
Despite their apparent happiness, Romano and Eugenia's relationship still had its challenges.
Romano Campbell was an Army sergeant, so he served 7 years in the Army, 2 tours in Iraq.
With each tour in Iraq, it grew harder and harder for Romano and Eugenia to keep the fire in their romance burning.
This is a woman who is working to take care of her family, quite a large family, and she has a husband who's gone a lot.
Ultimately, Eugenia's loneliness drove her to find comfort in the arms of another man.
When he went to Iraq, Eugenia was going with the sergeant. She got pregnant. She ended up having the baby and giving the baby up for adoption. And the military don't really believe in divorce, so they advised him to do a legal separation.
Despite Eugenia's infidelity and pressure from Romano's superiors to separate from her, the couple refused to give up on their marriage. And when Romano wrapped up his final tour in Iraq, he chose not to re-enlist.
He just wanted his family more. That's why I think he wanted to be out. You know, he wanted to take care of his family. He loved his family.
He got back together with her. He loved her. But I believe that she had his heart.
To help strengthen their family bond, Eugenia and Romano decided to move back to their hometown of Pritchard, Alabama.
They seem to be doing good, and he got on at Superior Oil.
He decided to get a job working offshore. And anyone that works offshore, that means you're going to be gone away from home a lot. So he worked 2 weeks offshore, 2 weeks back on land. So that meant a lot of time away from Eugenia and a lot of time away from the kids.
For Romano, being gone for only 2 weeks a month was a vast improvement over being in a war zone for years at a time. And working the oil rigs also paid better.
The finances was great. I think it was more than great. He's always had. He's never lacked anything.
It appeared Eugenia and Romano had managed to put their troubles behind them and were more in love than ever.
They seem to be getting along fine. Everything seemed to be fine.
But in October 2011, a series of events would bring the Campbells' reinvigorated romance to an abrupt and brutal end.
I went back in with the EMTs, and I did notice blood on him after they was trying to resuscitate him.
EMTs quickly realized there's nothing they can do to save Romano Campbell.
He had multiple gunshots about his body, and we couldn't determine at that time whether they were entrance wounds or exit wounds.
It's clear to the officers that Romano's death is no accident.
This particular level of crime obviously was not a self-inflicted crime. It was one in which there had to have been some type of assailant involved.
Coming up, as investigators work to track down a killer, they open a Pandora's box of secrets and lies that reveal an unexpected double life.
It did run through our mind that maybe there was some connection with this, but we didn't know exactly how. Every question we asked him, he just denied.
She said, "Come to my house now. My house is on fire."
By the fall of 2011, Eugenia and Romano Campbell had weathered the ups and downs of nearly 10 years of marriage, and their relationship seemed that much stronger for it.
I didn't see any struggling with them. I didn't see any kind of lack of anything. She was the perfect wife.
But on October 12th, 2011, police in Pritchard, Alabama discover Romano, an Army veteran who survived 2 tours in Iraq, dead on the floor of his own living room, with what appear to be multiple gunshot wounds.
This is a man who survived IED explosions and then came home to be murdered.
As patrol officers secure the perimeter, friends and neighbors gather to comfort Eugenia. Inside the house, homicide detectives are getting their first look at the crime scene.
I did observe the victim, Mr. Campbell, lying behind a sofa or a couch. His feet were faced up towards the bedroom area, where the bedrooms were on the far end of the house.
This is a man who had just gotten home from work. He worked offshore. He had just walked in the door. The keys were still in the door. The trunk of his car was still open.
There wasn't an extreme amount of blood on the victim's body at the time, and nothing appeared to be disturbed, so we were kind of puzzled.
Numerous things ran through my head. It could have been a burglar that broke into the house right before Mr. Campbell came home, and Mr. Campbell starved him, or it could have been somebody else waiting outside and came in and shot him.
There were a lot of possibilities at the time.
One thing police do know is that this isn't the first time they've been called to this residence.
About a week before Mr. Campbell was killed, I responded to that location in regards to a burglary.
There had been a prior incident where the wife of the victim had called and reported a burglary at the house.
In an attempt to gather information, detectives invite Romano's wife, Eugenia, and her sister, Satanya, down to the station for an interview.
She stated that her and her sister had went to the casino down in Biloxi, and that Mr. Campbell had called her and told her that he was coming home a little later, and she decided to spend the night over to her sister's house and just come over the next day.
Romano worked offshore, so he was out for 2 weeks and then he'd be home for 2 weeks. On this particular occasion, his wife was not at home that night, and so she was not present at the time of his murder.
Eugenia explains she had a good reason for not wanting to be at home alone that night.
Miss Eugenia, she had reported a burglary at the house maybe about a week prior.
She was scared to stay there by herself, so she had been staying with her sister.
My sister was interviewed also. She gave the same alibi, saying that they was in Biloxi at the casino, and said afterwards they came home.
Investigators ask the sisters if they know anybody who might want Romano dead. Neither of them can think of a single person. However, Eugenia tells detectives that whoever broke into their home the previous week had stolen Romano's 9mm pistol.
I thought it may have been a connection. That person that broke in before might have been there when Mr. Campbell came home.
Romano and Eugenia would have been in what we call the urbanized areas of the city of Pritchard, whereby typically it's characterized by a lot of low employment, typically a lot of high crime as far as burglaries and things of that nature, and every now and then shootings.
You have a lot of areas that are rough, and it wouldn't be unexpected for there to be a burglary or robbery gone bad that turns into a murder.
Back at the crime scene, the CSI officer has yet to uncover any evidence to support an armed robbery theory.
Nothing appeared to be disturbed, so we were kind of puzzled at that time, because normally, if this was a typical home invasion where the victim came home and encountered someone in the house, there would have probably been a struggle, or things would have been missing, like TVs, game systems. So we basically looked throughout the house. We noticed that items of value were not taken.
We didn't find a point of entry prior to Mr. Campbell opening the front door. We checked the perimeter and didn't find anything out of place. Any windows broken. The back door was kind of in shambles, but it was from a prior burglary.
One of the curious things about the investigation from the very beginning was Romano was shot multiple times. At the scene, we only found 2 shell casings. And what was interesting, both those shell casings were found under furniture or under something where they would have been hidden. And so it appears as if someone picked up the shell casings in an attempt to hide their evidence. That is very unusual from a burglary standpoint.
Is it possible that the thief had returned to rob the house once again and ends up using Romano's own gun against him? While it seems like a long shot, investigators aren't willing to rule anything out just yet.
We basically had no clue other than he was killed inside the residence, and somebody evidently was inside the residence or came in the residence while he was returning home.
In the meantime, investigators face another difficult task: informing Romano's mother, Patricia, of her son's death.
My mom is a chaplain for Pritchard Police Department.
When detectives reach out to Ms. Campbell, the case takes another unexpected turn.
On the day that Mr. Campbell was found murdered in his house, when his mother was notified, her house is actually burning to the ground at the time.
Everyone was coming to my house, my neighbors and my sisters and everybody was coming there because of my loss of the house and fire. But they didn't have any idea that I was losing my firstborn son.
One day, this woman lost everything. She lost her son and she lost her home. It was just a devastating day.
I've been on that side of the fence, consoling that family, but now I need somebody to console me. We talking about my child is laying here on that floor, dead. It was a feeling that I wasn't in reality.
With the cause of the fire unknown, investigators are concerned that someone is specifically targeting the family.
And it did run through our mind that maybe there was some connection with this, but we didn't know exactly how it fitted.
He is shot inside his own home. And then the same day, you have his mother, whose house catches fire. Something was off.
Coming up, as the investigation moves forward, a new witness could change everything. And the identity of Romano Campbell's killer will stun both friends and family.
I had a phone call, and it was a gentleman said that he had some information on the case.
Some of the questions that we asked him, he was evasive to. He was just straight out lying.
In Pritchard, Alabama, Romano and Eugenia Campbell's life together has tragically been cut short. 32-year-old Romano has been gunned down in his own home. And before his family has even had a chance to process what's happened, another tragedy strikes.
You have a mother who, on the same day her son was murdered, across town, her house goes up in flames. You think, those two things may be connected. Surely this isn't a coincidence.
Well, basically, that day, everything was still up in the air. We basically had no clue. It could have been very well some connection, but we were unsure at that time.
Mobile County arson investigators are dispatched to Patricia Campbell's residence and begin combing through the wreckage. It doesn't take them long to determine the source of the fire.
The fire department determined that this was an electrical fire, that these two incidents were not related, that this just happened to be a situation where a woman had really bad luck. In one day, this woman lost everything. She lost her son and she lost her home. It was just a devastating day.
I was dealing with the loss of everything, all my memories. I was dealing with a whole lot. But what kept me functioning was my faith in God.
The mystery of Patricia Campbell's house fire has been quickly solved. But across town at Eugenia and Romano's residence, investigators are no closer to determining who killed Romano or why.
There were a lot of possibilities at the time, but we didn't have the key ingredients or key components to just put everything together.
Investigators had hoped an interview with Romano's grieving widow Eugenia and her sister Satania might generate some new leads. But neither woman could think of anybody who'd want to harm Romano. When police speak with the rest of Romano's friends and family, they say the same thing.
I talked to his boss, even one of the shipmates that he dropped off prior to coming to his residence. And all of them talked very highly of him. We couldn't find out one person that we knew that he may have gotten into some type of altercation or wanted him dead.
Romano Campbell was a man who was not a criminal. He wasn't a bad man. He was a great man. He served our country. He served tours in Iraq. He provided for his large family. He loved his wife. He was a hard worker.
He was a model citizen. He's the type of citizen that we take pride in, that we celebrate.
The following morning, the coroner's office performs an autopsy on Romano's body and uncovers a chilling new detail.
He was shot 16 times. You could tell anger was in that, because if you're gonna kill him, you could have used one or two bullets. You didn't have to do the whole clip.
If this had been a regular home invasion, maybe a person that's trying to flee would have maybe shot once or twice. But being that he was shot multiple times means he was ambushed.
It was an overkill. It take one bullet to kill. If it was a robbery, one shot, somebody trying to get away, they're not gonna flood you with that many bullets. When I heard about that, I knew it was a passion.
By examining the lividity of Romano's body, the coroner's office is also able to determine time of death.
So he shot in the early morning hours, right when he got home, around midnight.
Now that the coroner has established a timeline, investigators fan out across the Campbell's neighborhood, looking for anybody who may have seen something that night.
We spoke to a few neighbors in the area. A couple that stayed next door, we asked them, did they hear any gunshots or did they see anyone at the residence or what time of the day it was that he returned home or so. And they really didn't have any clue.
We didn't have any witnesses at the time. The time of morning that it happened, normally everybody's asleep. So I didn't think that we would get anything to solve the case.
Although the canvassing effort yields no eyewitnesses, several of the Campbells' neighbors do report seeing a lot of unusual activity around the home in the last 2 weeks.
Some of the neighbors had told us that some other people had started coming to the house, and one neighbor actually had took down a license plate number.
Police traced the license plate to a vehicle registered to a man who lived in the area.
And we tracked him down, interviewed him, and he was actually telling us about an affair.
Investigators are stunned that they are now interviewing Eugenia Campbell's lover.
I was quite surprised at that.
Point blank, detectives asked the man if he had anything to do with Romano's murder.
He denied even knowing Mr. Campbell and basically stated that he and Eugenia had just a very casual, very friendly, very short-term relationship.
After a little investigation in that matter, we kind of ruled him out. He gave us an alibi for that day and where he was at, and it did check out.
But just as investigators are about to release the man, he reveals another interesting piece of information.
During the investigation, we did find out that she was having numerous affairs.
She had multiple men in her life that she appeared to have some type of sexual relationship with.
When detectives inform Romano's family of Eugenia's alleged infidelity, they're not entirely shocked.
She had so many affairs with different guys, and it was a disgrace to our family.
She had had multiple affairs while her husband was working offshore. She lived a completely different life for those 2 weeks that Romana was out of town.
We looked at those people she was having an affair with as being possible suspects.
So of course they're going to look at these lovers. They're going to question them because that would obviously be a motive in this case.
If the statement about Eugenia's revolving door of lovers is accurate, then the pool of potential suspects just got a whole lot deeper.
We believe that the potential suspect pool was quite large. And so we had to go through all of these individuals. Is this person potentially involved? Where was he at the time?
Investigators begin tracking down Eugenia's alleged lovers one by one.
So lots of these men were interviewed. We were able to exclude some of them because they might either have been in jail at the time, out of town. They were found ultimately through phone records.
With this new information about all of her affairs, detectives begin to question Eugenia's involvement in the murder. In a follow-up interview with detectives, Eugenia doesn't deny cheating on Romano, but she remains adamant she had nothing to do with his death. And given her rock-solid alibi from the night of the crime, investigators believe she may not have been there when Romano was murdered, but they still have suspicions.
Eugenia had called Romano 30 minutes before he was scheduled to arrive home. So we were very curious about that. I would say that Eugenia was probably at the top of the list of potential candidates who have committed this crime, but we did not believe that she was there.
I don't think she was the shooter, but I thought she had something to do with it. With no evidence at the time, I couldn't just stand on that alone, so we started looking elsewhere in the investigation.
With no other leads, the case begins to lose momentum. For Romano's family, it feels like they're living through a nightmare.
I felt as though my heart had been ripped out of my chest. Every day I got up was a challenge. Every day. And it felt like I was walking alone. It felt like it was so dark. And I just wanted just a little peek of sunshine.
As for Eugenia, it seems that the loss of her husband, coupled with the public revelation that she'd been unfaithful to him, made life in Pritchard unbearable.
Turns out that it wasn't too long after that Eugenia moved to Biloxi, Mississippi.
2.5 years transpire with no new developments in the case.
The family did a great job of convincing me that justice had not been served fairly. It was to the point, though, we could not tie all the dots and measure all the pieces together to figure out the who, what, where, and why.
More than 2 years later, in 2014, police receive a phone call from a man in the nearby town of Ocean Springs, Mississippi, that changes everything.
I was sitting at my desk and the dispatch called and advised me that I had a phone call. And it was a gentleman said that he had some information on the case. So I took the call. The guy introduced himself. And he said that we had a homicide in Pritchard and that the gentleman that did it basically confessed to him. And once he told us that, I immediately asked him, did he know for sure what case it was? And he stated that it was the husband of Eugenia Campbell. So I contacted Sergeant Martin and told him that we was going to take a ride to Mississippi.
Coming up, is this the break investigators have been waiting for? Or will it prove to be yet another dead end?
We threw everything we had at him.
March 2014. It's now been over 2 years since Eugenia Campbell's husband, Romano, was brutally gunned down in their South Alabama home. But just when it seems the case might never be solved, a Mississippi man named Ross has come forward, claiming to have information about the murder.
So I contacted Sergeant Martin and told him that we was going to take a ride to Ocean Springs, Mississippi.
We proceeded to drive down to Mississippi, and we met him at a local gas station there.
According to Ross, a 27-year-old friend of his named Frank Williams had recently made a disturbing confession to Ross and his brother.
What he told us was that he and Frank had been talking. Frank was just some kind of way just started just rambling and telling him some things.
He spills the beans. He ends up telling these two guys in Biloxi that he killed a man named Romano Campbell in Pritchard.
Investigators asked Ross if Mr. Williams explained why he'd murdered Romano Campbell.
He basically told us that Eugenia and Frank had been dating at one point.
They moved to Biloxi, Mississippi. They started a new life there. In fact, they had a child together. Years had gone by. Apparently, they got into some sort of falling out. He moves in with his friends.
Once a warrant was signed for the arrest of Mr. Williams, we contacted the Marshal Service to try and locate him because we were not sure exactly where he was. Ultimately, he was actually arrested at his mother's house in Pritchard. So as soon as he was arrested, he was taken to the Pritchard Police Department.
Frank Williams proves to be a tough nut to crack.
We threw everything we had at him. Well, where were you at this time? Well, I wasn't there. I was never there. Well, did you and Eugenia have a relationship together? No, she was just my friend. We just talked to each other and stuff like that. Every question we asked him, he just denied. But he was kind of nervous about some things. I could tell some of the questions that we asked him, he was evasive to. And a lot of things he was just straight out lying about. We just put the hammer down on him and told him, look, if you want to sit here and continue lying about this, we already know certain things that you've already told another person. We just put everything out in front of him and just told him, look, regardless to what you say right here, you're still going to jail.
There's an awful lot about this entire scenario that I know. One thing after another. Okay? I'm going to be honest with you. And this is what I don't want. Okay? Don't go down by yourself. Okay?
He basically, at that instant, said, okay, I'm ready to talk. And he basically told us the story from beginning to end.
According to Frank, it all began in August of 2011 when he first met Eugenia Campbell.
From the time y'all met, how long was it before y'all started a sexual relationship? Exactly. About 2 weeks. Okay.
He knew that she was married. Her husband would go off to work out of town, and then he would come by.
Frank admits that he fell hard for Eugenia. Not long after the two began sleeping together, Frank introduced Eugenia and her 4 kids to his family.
I met her, and, she just said she didn't have anybody to help her. She said she was married, but she was in the process of getting a divorce.
Initially, he told them that Ramona used to be very abusive to her, and she wanted to basically get out that situation.
Eugenia had informed him that her and her husband had some domestic instances with each other, and that she was basically tired of it. Eugenia told him that she wanted to hire him to take her husband out, which means to kill him.
She made the comment to him that if something would have happened, she would collect Social Security benefits for the children, and there was life insurance, substantial life insurance that would help her be able to support the children, and then she would be able to give him half of that life insurance policy. Initially, he kept putting Eugenia off and did not want to get involved. However, when he learned of the level of domestic violence that she claimed that caused her to go to the hospital,
he decided that yes, that he would kill her husband.
Okay. From that point on to the time that she first asked you to do this for her, to kill her husband, how long was that? From the first time y'all had sex until she asked you to kill her husband?
About a month and a half.
Okay.
She basically tormented me. Until I did.
Frank claims that in the weeks leading up to the murder, Eugenia spelled out her plan for eliminating her husband.
The break-in was staged. It was kind of ironic that the only thing that was stolen at the time at the first break-in was a 9mm hand pistol. And the 2 shell casings that we did find on scene was a 9mm hand pistol.
Frank says on the night Romano was due back from his stint in the Gulf, Eugenia left her kids at her sister's house, then met up with him to put the second part of the plan into action.
She picked him up, took him over to the house, let him in, and gave him the gun, and he waited inside.
Frank tells detectives that once he was inside the residence, Eugenia returned to her sister's house and waited.
She left her car there, again to make it appear as if she's at home, like Romano would expect when he arrived home.
He said he sat there for a while inside the house waiting for her husband to return. Finally, he said when her husband returned, he was already inside the house.
Even when he came home, tell me what happened.
He came home, he came to the door, and when he came to the door, I was standing up here in the hallway. And once he got right there behind the couch between the door and the hallway where I could see him, I shot him.
Right. How many times did you shoot? About? Till the gun stopped. What did you do then?
He advised he also had a Nike gym bag around the gun, so when he shoot, it would catch all the bullets.
1 or 2 fell out the bag, and that's how we got the shell casings. He said he called her, and he told her to come pick him up, and she was going to pick him up and meet him on the back road.
There's a convenience store right on the other side of a very small patch of woods from their house. He basically left the house, walked through that little cut, and was picked up by Eugenia at the convenience store. The next day, she called the police, and the police discovered his body inside the house.
Frank says that despite carrying out Eugenia's plan to a T, he never received his half of the $200,000 insurance payout, even after he and Eugenia moved to Biloxi together.
He was mad at her. She owed him some money. She had never given him the money, and he was worried that she was trying to cheat him out of that money.
With Frank's confession on the record, police formally charge him with first-degree murder.
He was distraught after it, and that's what I believe led him to telling us everything what had transpired. We did arrest him and charge him with the murder of Mr. Campbell.
Coming up, after charging Frank Williams, investigators turn their attention to Eugenia Campbell and find out what a wicked game this wife and mother of 5 had really been playing.
She had a gambling problem.
I think the Lord hit her a couple of times, but the devil won in the end.
On March 26, 2014, Frank Williams, the 27-year-old lover of Eugenia Campbell, confessed to firing the 16 bullets that killed Eugenia's husband, Romano Campbell. But Frank claims that Eugenia was the crime's true mastermind.
When he confessed to his part of the murder and also confessed to Eugenia's part, and it was her idea, her planning, she set this plan in motion, we then signed a warrant for her arrest.
They arrested Eugenia the next day, the 27th of March 2014. I never forget.
Her story is she didn't do it. She put it all on him. He did it.
Detectives continue to dig deeper into Eugenia's personal life and discover the reason she was so desperate to cash in on the ample military benefits her husband had accrued.
She had a gambling problem. Said that she stayed out at the casinos a lot. She was spending more money gambling than she should be and not using it for around the house.
She done let all the bills got behind. My theory was she had to get rid of him for that purpose because of her gambling addiction.
With her gambling addiction revealed, and with multiple sources acknowledging Eugenia's attempts to hire a hitman, investigators take another run at eliciting a confession from her.
She was brought in by the marshals and she was questioned by the DA office. Initially, I believe her story was the same as his. She kind of denied until they basically dangled all the evidence in front of her and informed her that, hey, the gig is up. We know what happened.
Almost a year after she had been arrested, we went over to the jail, brought her in, and she gave a complete confession.
Nearly 5 years after Romano's murder, in a Mobile County criminal court, both Eugenia Campbell and Frank Williams plead guilty to the murder of Eugenia's husband, Romano.
Honestly, I was quite surprised that they both decided to plead guilty and just leave their sentence up to the judge. I was quite surprised at that. Both Miss Campbell and Mr. Williams were sentenced to a life sentence.
That's a long time to think about what you've done. I can't use the word satisfied, but I got justice. I think the Lord hit her a couple of times, but the devil won in the end. She was a horrible person. When she killed him like that, it really showed it just what type of person she was. It really did.
For more information on Snapped, go to oxygen.com. She was a dedicated EMT who found her soulmate after years of searching.
She thought he was the man that she was going to be with the rest of her life.
It was just a lovey-dovey relationship.
She was always worried about everyone else. As long as everyone else was happy, she felt like she was happy too.
But that life of love and sacrifice would be swept away with one breathtakingly vicious crime. In the darkness on the edge of town.
He was dispatched as a possible Hispanic male had been shot.
The question mark everybody was asking, who is this person?
She stood there and watched the detectives. Maybe you're there to see what they're gonna find.
As this shocking case unfolds, investigators must answer one question. Why was this life taken in a remote area of peaceful North Carolina? And who was responsible?
We were told this man may strike again. There's a predator out there.
Everywhere you turn around, there's just another angle.
Your intensity goes up, your adrenaline starts flowing.
What is it that he's worried that she knows about? Specifically.
I remember when I found out, it was very chilling to me.
Because it's not his out.
September 5th, 2006. It's a little after 1 a.m. in a remote corner of Brunswick County, North Carolina. Situated along Highway 211, the area is known to locals as the Green Swamp.
In the heart of the Green Swamp, in the middle of the Highway 211, is this restaurant called Becky's Seafood Restaurant.
The proprietors of Becky's, McKinley Little and his wife, live next door and are home that night with their daughter, Debbie.
My dad was going to bed, and his bedroom is at the end of the house next to the restroom.
As Mr. Little settles into bed, a noise outside jolts him wide awake.
He heard 2 gunshots. The first one being, he described it as muffled compared to the second.
out, and he said something awful has happened out in the restaurant. And Mama said, go see.
When Mr. Little returns, it's obvious he's witnessed something truly terrifying.
He come back in, and he was white as a ghost and shaking all over. He said somebody's dead in the parking lot. Somebody's been killed. So I called 911.
Central County 911, where's your emergency?
She's a daughter and laying his puppy on.
Okay, ma'am, do you want to talk to the officer?
I want somebody to get out here.
He was dispatched as a possible Hispanic male had been shot.
Sergeant Thomas Tolley with the Brunswick County Sheriff's Department is one of the first officers to arrive at the scene.
I instruct Deputy Now to go to the right side of the building, and I'll go to the left side of the building, and we start approaching. We fan apart, we go around, and as soon as we get to the front left corner of the building, we see the body laying there. Walking up, it did appear that it was possibly a Hispanic male. You get there, and then we realize it's a female.
There was a wound to the middle of her forehead, and also to the side of the forehead. Looked like 2 gunshots.
We checked for pulse, we checked for anything that we could do, but obviously she was gone at that point.
Who was this woman? And what evil had befallen her in this remote section of coastal Carolina? To answer those questions, investigators will seek help from a familiar source. A woman named Martha Farmer. Born in 1966, Martha Farmer moved to Brunswick County, North Carolina from Michigan, desperate to start a new life away from a brutish ex-husband.
Martha said it was a rocky relationship. He liked to drink. We don't let her do nothing and stuff like that, so she had to get out of that relationship.
Martha, a trained EMT, was trying to outrun other demons besides just her ex.
Martha was an EMT years and years ago, but she had a tragic death. An infant died on Martha, and she couldn't deal with that. So Martha just let her certification go.
When you see some things that we see, it can hurt you spiritually, emotionally, even physically. And I think that brought her into a depression.
A depression that was so severe, it ultimately cost Martha more than just her career. She also lost her children to their father in a custody battle.
Martha's ex-husband took her to court to get custody of her 2 kids in the Michigan area. He got custody.
After moving to the Carolinas for a fresh start, Martha bounced from one low-paying job to the next. Although she was just barely scraping by, the fog of her depression slowly began to lift in her new surroundings.
She would have her down days. Even though she was down, she would always laugh and make you laugh. She just had that loving personality that everybody fell in love with.
Martha worked at a gas station, and I went to go get gas, and we just hung out, and we just became good friends after that.
Martha felt a renewed desire to return to the career she had once cherished.
I started my EMT course, and I was telling Martha about it, so she decided to take the EMT course, and then we both graduated.
After reobtaining her EMT certification, Martha landed a job with a local ambulance service and volunteered with a local rescue squad.
She felt she was doing something good for people.
But the job also brought Martha something else, a second chance at love.
His name's Clarence. He was one of the guys I worked with I was driving with. He drove one truck, I drove another truck.
Clarence, Martha, and I, we all worked together at Coastline Care. They decided to get a relationship together. Maybe 6 months into the relationship, Clarence moved in with Martha and became boyfriend and girlfriend.
For the next 3 years, Martha enjoyed the security of domestic life that she had long craved.
Just a lovey-dovey relationship. It was getting up at work at 8 o'clock in the morning and getting off at 5, cooking dinner.
She thought he was the man that she was going to be with the rest of her life.
However, a few years into the relationship, Martha realized their union was built on a lie.
Clarence had deep down feelings still for someone he had known before he had met Martha. he ended up cheating on Martha with that woman. And that kind of ended their relationship. And it hurt her a lot.
With the man of her dreams no longer by her side, Martha turned to a close-knit group of coworkers for support.
We were more family than friends. We'd all go together and hang out. We'd usually cook something to eat together. I mean, I loved her like she was my family.
Of all her coworkers, Martha was perhaps closest with 51-year-old Jean Bassard.
Jean was an excellent EMT intermediate, but he worked as an EMT firefighter. Jean got hired on where Martha and I worked. He was just an outgoing person. Jean would talk to people, just make you welcome.
Like Martha, Jean Bassard had recently found himself on the wrong end of an unexpected breakup.
What I was told by Martha was that Jean was getting separated or filing a divorce.
In Jean, Martha had found a kindred spirit with which to share her relationship woes. Jean also had endured a tough marriage, mostly plagued by his wife's drug problem.
The way Martha's personality and Jean's personality, they connected.
Leaning on each other, Jean and Martha began to recover from their respective breakups. And by the summer of 2006, both of them seemed to be back on their feet.
Jean and Martha was close to each other. Martha really liked Jean.
But their closest friends could never imagine the horrific situation in which Martha and Jean would soon find themselves. It starts with the shocking discovery McKinley Little makes behind his restaurant on the night of September 5th, 2006.
There was a woman found dead at the area of the old Becky's restaurant in the Green Swamp.
She was shot to death and left for dead in abandoned parking lots. I mean, who does that?
Coming up, as investigators scramble to identify the victim and piece together what happened to her, they eventually expose a side to Jean and Martha's friendship that was darker and more dangerous than anyone could have imagined.
Most of the time, people get murdered because they're doing something they're not supposed to do.
By the summer's end of 2006, 40-year-old EMT Martha Farmer had weathered 2 failed relationships and managed to get back on her feet, thanks in large part to the support of her friends and fellow EMTs.
When we worked together, we were always laughing about something, having a good time.
Of all her friends, nobody helped Martha through the tough times like 51-year-old Jean Bassard.
Jean made Martha feel happy and special.
But just when it seemed like Martha and Jean had made it through the tough times, a disturbing crime brings a dark cloud back into their lives. It started on September 5th, when Martha's fellow first responders, along with scores of police and homicide detectives, found themselves at the scene of a murder in a secluded section of Brunswick County, North Carolina, known as the Green Swamp.
It's the only business on that road. You have crime scene, you have your area detectives, you're going to have EMS transport, you're going to have equipment for lighting because it was at night.
It was a gloomy day. It was a very remote area. It was scary.
The first task for investigators is to determine how this unidentified woman was killed.
She was laying on her stomach, and we could see clearly when we got there that she had been shot in the head.
There was one wound to the center of the forehead, which the skin was split open, and another wound above the temple, which looked like another entrance wound, and a wound to the side of the head where it would have been exit wound.
So we know that when she was shot right there. Looked like not transported somewhere else. And looking at the angle and the entry, she died fairly quick.
With the cause of death apparent, investigators look for some way to identify the victim.
There was no personal items, no wallet, no purse, no cell phone. Anything would have been on her person was not with her.
The odds were stacked against us when we determined that we have, a homicide and no identity. So we start looking for anything, any simple clue?
We slowly went through every bit of the parking lot and looking for any shell casings or even a weapon itself. Nothing was located.
Investigators also interview McKinley Little, the owner of the restaurant, and his daughter Debbie, but neither of them can provide anything more than scant details.
He heard the gunshots, and he looked out the window and saw our vehicle leaving the area.
We couldn't identify the car because it was dark, and it backed up. There wasn't anything we could really tell him except there was a dead person in our parking lot.
With no way to identify either the victim or the perpetrator, investigators fan out across the Green Swamp area in search of other potential witnesses. Nobody in the area seems to have seen or heard anything. But a pair of officers managed to uncover some important physical evidence.
We had our investigator going in different directions. One of the uniformers had located a shirt with blood on it, which was some distance down the road on Highway 211. It didn't look like it would fit the young lady that was laying in the parking lot, nowhere near her. We had that, and at the same time, the investigator had found an apron. It was obviously a work apron.
Yeah, the apron gave some details. We figured out that the victim was probably a waitress.
As investigators take a closer look at the body, they discover another important clue, one that's been obscured until now.
She had a name tag on her shirt, Carla.
The name tag is from Eddie Romanelli's, a well-known Italian restaurant just outside the city of Wilmington.
Now we're looking at 3 o'clock in the morning, so we make phone calls, find the manager of Eddie Romanelli's restaurant. It's probably 30 miles away, at least. So we go up there and meet with him. He explained that he knew a Carla and described her as Carla Bizard, and that she was an employee there, a waitress.
So it's important for us to establish their identity, make contact with as many people as possible within that person's life to put together a picture of who they are, what they were about, so we can establish how they got to this point.
Detectives relay this information to officers at the station. When they run Carla's name through the system, her picture matches the woman in the parking lot. They also learn that 36-year-old Carla has a criminal record.
We researched the background of our deceased victim, Carla Bizard, and able to determine that she has some run-ins with the law.
Carla had a troubled past. It was a DUI and maybe a drug paraphernalia charge.
Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, detectives speaking with the owner learned Carla had worked the previous night shift and had left the restaurant a little after 11:30 p.m.
He said that, to his knowledge, she had arranged to meet with an individual known to him as Bit.
Carla's boss describes Bit as a middle-aged Caucasian woman, but he doesn't know her real name or where she lives. Then he goes on to tell investigators that the rumor going around the restaurant is that there's a man in Carla's life who's been causing her problems for months.
As we're at Eddie Romanelli's, the discussion turned to an estranged husband.
That man is 51-year-old Jean Bassard.
Jean and Carla Bassard had been married for quite some time, and they had recently separated. From what I understood, it was Carla who had left.
According to Carla's boss, the separation wasn't amicable in the least. And apparently, the biggest point of contention between Carla and Jean was who would get the couple's prized red Mustang.
Carla's pride was getting that Mustang. It was a very beautiful red Mustang that she wanted out of the divorce.
According to Carla's boss, Jean wasn't willing to give up the car.
He wasn't giving it back. There were several times that he said he would, but he wouldn't. He kept luring her on. She was telling her other employees going to get that Mustang.
It could be a domestic violence situation that just completely got out of hand. There's so many variables going on at one time.
After speaking with Carla's boss, investigators dispatch patrol officers to make contact with Jean Bassard. But as they wait for that to happen, investigators look into the possibility that Carla's criminal record might have played a part in her demise.
From that, it expanded our scope as potentially who may want to hurt her, who she runs with, we had to keep that in the back of our mind that Carla knows a lot of people.
Coming up, as detectives chase down these leads, another possibly dangerous suspect surfaces in the murder of Carla Bassard.
Ponytail, red truck guy, kind of a rough-looking guy.
He told us that we have to find this man. He may strike again. But there was a very dangerous man out there.
Detectives in Brunswick County, North Carolina, are less than 24 hours into the murder investigation of 36-year-old waitress Carla Bassard. Though police are investigating Carla's own criminal past, they're also looking at her pending divorce from 51-year-old EMT Jean Bassard as possible motive. It seems tension between Jean and Carla had flared up over the couple's beloved red Ford Mustang.
We made a phone call to him that we needed to talk to him about his ex-wife, and we met him at a location in Wilmington, North Carolina.
When Jean arrives, he's driving the red Mustang. But Jean appears distraught over the news of his estranged wife's death.
Identified myself, and once we met with him, we confirmed that his wife had passed away.
I mean, was very, very emotional and very upset because his estranged wife had died. Very, very devastated.
Jean describes Carla as someone who had worked hard to put her past transgressions behind her.
She went through cancer at one time, beat it, and she got into a rough crowd at one time, and she was getting away from that crowd. She had a very exceptional job at a restaurant, was trying to make something of herself.
Jean admits that their separation had been bitter, and that he and Carla had been arguing about who should get their Mustang, but he's adamant that he would never harm her.
We asked him about the last time he saw his estranged wife, where he was last night.
According to Jean, the previous day he'd worked his regular EMT shift, and after that, he went to work at his second job.
He worked at a military facility in our county at the time and was on duty when that happened.
My detectives were able to look into Jean Broussard's alibi and confirm that he was at work.
Although Jean's alibi checks out, there's something he says just before the interview wraps up that strikes investigators as odd.
Her friends and others would call Carla Crazy Carla because she was not stable. And he was not very descriptive after that, but that was his term, Crazy Carla. Anytime you start talking bad about somebody that just deceased, that's another clue.
Though his alibi seems airtight, investigators decide to keep Jean on their radar. They then turn to their only concrete lead and attempt to track down the woman known as Bit, whom Carla was allegedly planning to meet up with after work.
So our effort then was to locate this individual Bit, a white female that works EMS type work in Brunswick County.
Investigators asked Detective David Crocker to reach out to the Brunswick County EMT's office. On his first call, his efforts quickly pay off.
Identified myself, told him I was looking for a subject named Bit, and she said, "That's me." And I said, "What's your name?" "Martha Farmer."
The nickname Bit is Martha's nickname her mother gave her years and years and years ago.
So we drove down there and asked her about meeting with Carla that night. We started the conversation as to, do you know Carla Bassard? And she said yes. And we asked her as to last time she saw her, and she indicated that she had picked her up at Eddie Romeo's the night before.
She tells them that she had been friends with Carla and Carla's husband, Jean Bassard. At the time, Jean and Carla weren't separated, but Martha could see the writing on the wall.
What I was told by Martha was that Carla and Jean was getting separated.
Martha also states that as Jean and Carla's marriage fell apart, she had no choice but to side with her friend and coworker. But according to Martha, she'd grown close to Carla as well. After Jean took the Mustang, Martha would often give Carla rides. In fact, Martha tells police that's what happened on the night of September 5th.
Farmer indicated that she picked up Carla there at the restaurant in the parking lot, never got out of the car, and that she was taking her to meet with an individual known as Wayne, approximately 18 miles from Edward Mills.
But who exactly is Wayne? And why was Carla going to meet him in the middle of the night? According to Martha, Wayne was Carla's new lover.
She was indicating that Carla was excited about meeting with her new lover boyfriend, Wayne. Martha indicated that Carla was infatuated with Wayne and that it would go to such a degree about their sexual nature that she was very graphic about it.
Martha goes on to say that when she dropped Carla off, she and Wayne seemed very much in love.
She was indicating that Carla was being very secretive about him, but was excited about seeing him.
Investigators believe Martha is telling the truth. They ask Martha if she can provide them with a description of Wayne.
We had a composite artist come in and do a composite sketch of the person that Martha identified.
He was 5'9", that he wore a black t-shirt and blue jeans and a scraggly goatee and ponytail, and that he drove a red truck.
After the composite was done, we broadcast it in local news. We set up a 800 number at the sheriff's office for intake of any information, and the phones just started ringing. We're getting calls from people that know Wayne, people that know Wayne with a red truck, and people that look like the composite.
We take every call serious. You have to, because it's just that one little piece of information that could be the key to the case.
Every police officer, deputy, and investigator was out in those 24, 48 hours really beating the bush for a Wayne and his red truck.
Hewitt says investigators are looking for evidence along Highway 211 and hoping for a call from someone who knows Wayne.
The search for Wayne was a pretty big deal around here. In the press conference, they were begging the public for help. We were told this man may strike again. There's a predator out there.
But despite dozens of leads pouring in, none of them ultimately pan out.
Me and my partner, we started scouring the different areas looking for this truck, and we did not find it. So we were just running a dead end.
Back at square one, detectives again turn their attention to Martha Farmer and call her for more information.
We had more questions for her. Was she supposed to pick her back up? Was there any discussion about that? Any phone calls made with Wayne? Did she have any numbers?
Martha says she had made no plans with Carla to pick her up later that evening, and she has no additional information about Wayne. She does, however, give police the name of another potential suspect, Tom Pollard. Carla had dated Tom after separating from Jean Bassard, but before she started seeing the mysterious Wayne.
Farmer at this point is indicating that there was a romantic, hot and heavy relationship with this Tom individual. He lived in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Tom was wanting more of a relationship than Carla was able to give, and that he would be somebody of interest for us. She did indicate at this point that Tom knew Wayne and that Tom was a violent type person. She felt like if there is foul play here in any way involved, Tom would be in the middle of it.
Investigators consider the possibility that a jealous Tom might have caught wind of Carla's alleged late-night rendezvous with Wayne and waited until the couple were together to exact revenge.
We're thinking about different motives and theories, and here we have, is there a love triangle?
Coming up, before investigators can run down this new lead, the case will take another, even stranger turn. Courtesy, once again, of their now go-to source of information, Martha Farmer.
Because hold my head down. Proceed.
For more than 24 hours, lifelong EMT Martha Farmer has been aiding Brunswick County detectives with their investigation into the death of her friend, Carla Bassard. Martha told investigators that just after midnight on September 5th, she dropped Carla off for a date with her new boyfriend, Wayne. But when police couldn't locate Wayne, Martha supplied them with another name, Tom Pollard.
Farmer gave us the name Tom and complete information about him. we felt comfortable that we had to go find him. Myself and my partner were able to locate this Tom at his residence in Myrtle Beach.
Detectives make the 90-minute drive to South Carolina to meet with Tom. For a guy with an allegedly vicious temper, Tom appears quite shaken up by the news of Carla's death.
He was surprised to hear the news, visibly upset. Tom said he had known the victim, Carla, and he had seen her the prior weekend, but had not seen her that week.
He gave us where he was the night in question, and as I recall, he didn't even come into the state of North Carolina, and then he'd stayed there the whole time. We had nothing to indicate he was in our area at all.
He seemed honest, willing to help. Didn't seem like he had anything to do with it.
Investigators are quickly able to verify Tom Pollard's alibi. And with Carla's elusive boyfriend Wayne still nowhere to be found, investigators ask Tom for his take on their primary source of information, Martha Farmer.
We started talking about Farmer, and Pollard indicated that Farmer had made Carla upset recently. He was told from Carla that Farmer had indicated that her strange husband, Gene, was either missing or had been killed.
Detectives are confused. Jean Bassard is clearly alive and well. So why would Martha Farmer tell Carla her estranged husband was dead? And do so just days before Carla herself was murdered? Tom Pollard shares detectives' concerns.
He was trying to find the answers like we were. In fact, he was very suspicious of Martha Farmer.
Investigators now have a sneaking suspicion Martha Farmer has been playing them all along.
We knew Farmer was somewhere in the background dictating things going on that we need to look at her more. And every time we turn around, people were saying, just something's not right here.
Before detectives bring Martha back in for questioning, they decide to take a look at the evidence from the crime scene for more clues. Namely, the bloody shirt found near the crime scene.
The roadway in front of the restaurant, we had found a bowling shirt, which was size 5X.
The shirt had an emblem of a local bowling alley and had the name Clarence on it. A 5X shirt is not exactly a common shirt, so we called the bowling alley, and from that it led us to the gentleman who owned the shirt, who had a relationship with Martha Farmer.
It turns out the gentleman is the ex-boyfriend who had broken Martha Farmer's heart, Clarence Biggs.
Subsequently, we went to does he know where this t-shirt is? And did he own one? Yeah. I said, where is it? He said, last place I left it was in Martha Farmer's house.
If what Clarence tells police is true, was Martha Farmer wearing this oversized shirt the night Carla was killed? And if so, was Martha somehow involved in the crime? After confirming Clarence's alibi for the night of the murder, investigators come across another bizarre piece of information. One they only realize when they review the log of officers and EMTs who were at the scene the night Carla was murdered.
Everybody's put on a crime scene log. That way we can look back. She was signed in where she was on scene.
Martha was a volunteer EMS worker. She was actually the one who responded to this call.
Thinking back on the night of the murder, police were desperate to identify Carla's body. Now the question is, why didn't Martha speak up?
The question mark everybody was asking, who is she? It was obvious that we were all making every effort to find out. Farmer was sitting next to officers, and she was sitting right there and just remained mute. She never got upset, never showed emotion, never showed any connection at all to the victim.
She stood there and watched the detectives. Maybe you're there to see what they're gonna find.
I remember when I found out days later, or however long it was very chilling to me.
The fact that Martha was at the crime scene the night of the shooting casts even more suspicion her way. And on September 6th, detectives obtain a search warrant for her home.
In the home itself, we were looking for maybe a murder weapon, any blood, anything that could tie her to the crime.
Investigators find no physical evidence tying Martha to the murder, but they do find a disturbing piece of circumstantial evidence.
we had found a picture of Jean.
It looked like it had been ripped from a second person that was in the picture, and later we discovered that it was a picture of Jean and Carla together. Why would Martha Farmer have a long picture of Jean laying on her coffee table in her house? We need to press her more. Now we're absolutely going from a potential witness to she got involved.
On September 7th, detectives bring Martha in for more questioning. They ask her if there's something going on between her, Jean, and Carla that she's been keeping from them.
How did that picture of Jane end up there that was stolen? How did that end up there? Did Jane give you that, or did Jane gave you the picture? Exactly.
Once I have pictures in my clothes,
Detectives press Martha about why she didn't identify Carla on the night of her death.
You were just feet away from a friend that you knew died. Why wouldn't you tell us? She couldn't explain that.
I don't understand exactly what it is you're asking me. Why?
3 little letters. Why, Mark?
Nor can Martha explain how Clarence's shirt ended up at the crime scene.
And he said he left it in her house. But she never would admit she wore that t-shirt that night. She couldn't explain how it was there. Don't know.
For hours, detectives grill Martha to no avail. But just as they're about to wrap up the interview, Martha unloads a bombshell.
Farmer changed her story again. She did admit to being there on scene. But she said that Wayne was the assassin, and that he's the one that committed the act.
Martha tells investigators that rather than dropping Carla off at the location she'd mentioned in her original statement, she'd actually driven Carla out to Becky's restaurant to meet Wayne. But Martha claims that when they got there, Wayne shot Carla as soon as she stepped foot outside Martha's car. Then, in a bizarre twist, Wayne forced Martha to fire the next shot.
The first shot that Wayne had shot her in the head. The second shot, Wayne had grabbed Farmer's hand and made her squeeze the trigger with Wayne holding her hand and shoot Carla the final time.
The confession strikes investigators as suspect. In fact, they've come to believe that maybe Wayne isn't even real.
We couldn't find any leads on Wayne, and we felt like Wayne was non-existent. We felt like we were pulling teeth with Farmer, that she was holding stuff back and wasn't truthful with us, and that there was more to be answered. We're not buying the events that she told us. Wayne did not exist. Confronted her with that she's lying, and I explained to her that you have to tell the truth, but you're not going home. Right now I'm placing you on arrest. I ran her Miranda rights.
That morning, just 48 hours after Carla Bassard's death, Martha Farmer is charged with murder. The news comes as a shock to her friends and coworkers.
She was my best friend. I didn't think Martha could actually take somebody's life. We worked on the ambulance. Instead of taking somebody's life, we're actually trying to fix her life.
Less than a week later, as the shock of Martha's arrest is still setting in with her friends and coworkers, detectives receive a call from her attorneys.
The district attorney's office had been approached by 2 local council attorneys to give us a formal statement as to what happened. So we sat down with Martha.
This time, Martha vows to tell the truth, and she starts with an admission that turns her previous confession upside down. She admits that Wayne, the man she claims orchestrated Carla's murder, is a figment of her imagination.
In the law, you told me there's a guy named Wayne who didn't exist.
I'll tell you why. Almost my cousin, almost a slickhead dude.
Martha also tells detectives that the person that really wanted Carla dead was her friend, Jean Bassard.
She indicated that Jean was upset because he thought Carla had not been faithful to Jean and had disrespected him.
Martha tells detectives that Jean urged her to do the deed, and she claims Jean's ties to a local biker gang made it impossible for Martha to say no.
Because who cut people's eyes out? Jean. Okay. He has a deadhead on his right shoulder. I have no reason to doubt it. You don't get that unless you kill somebody.
Martha would constantly indicate that Jean was an enforcer and that she had to do this for fear of her life.
If somebody looks you in the face and tells you, if you don't do this right, or if we don't do this right, they're gonna come after us.
Who looked you in the face and told you
The
that?
chief did.
According to Martha, Jean gave her the gun and instructed her to lure Carla to the green swamp by promising that he would be there to hand over something Carla couldn't resist.
Did he tell you what to tell her, how to get her to go? What was that?
She was supposed to be with
The red Mustang.
Martha says that when they arrived at the restaurant, she and Carla got out of the car.
Said that she had to use the restroom, told this to Carla. Carla said that she had to also, then to pull over to the side parking lot. And that at this point, said she approached Carla and just shot her in the head.
When you did shoot her, what happened?
But Martha says that single shot didn't kill Carla.
Both shots. Stay down, stay down.
What was she saying?
She said my name.
You shot her the second time. Did she move after that?
No.
It's a stunning confession. But after so many lies, is Martha finally telling the truth? Coming up, as detectives dig deeper into Martha's story, the allegations of Jean Bassard's ties to a murderous biker gang come into focus.
We need to corroborate what you're saying. Has Jean ever hurt anybody else? Specifically. Some case we can look at and say, yeah, he is bad.
On September 7th, 2006, detectives in Brunswick County, North Carolina, have placed Martha Farmer, a well-loved local EMT, under arrest for the shooting death of 36-year-old waitress Carla Bassard. Martha now alleges that her own best friend, Carla's estranged husband, Jean Bassard, coerced her into committing the crime.
Jean blackmailed Martha. Jean was with the Hells Angels. Jean wanted Carla to leave him alone. Martha said, well, what do you want done? And Jean said, I want her dead. Jean basically told Martha, if you don't do this, I know where your family lives, and I'll take care of them if I need to.
After interviewing Martha, investigators start looking into her claims that Jean is involved with a notorious local biker gang.
We got very little substantiation from anybody else. There's nothing we could have presented in court at this point against Jean, more than just by her staying alone that it was his idea. She wanted to keep relaying that in fear of my life, I had to participate to the level I did. Somebody was going to hurt me. But there was no proof of that.
Despite the lack of evidence to support Martha's allegations, detectives still have a lot of questions for Jean Bassard.
After the final interview with Farmer, we decided to focus our attention on Jean Bassard to make inquiry more than just knowledge if he had any participating act in this. He was in a local hospital and he was terminally ill. And just a couple of days later, he actually died.
When I found out of Jean's death, I was shocked because Jean wasn't sick at all at work, you know. He didn't have no chemos that he did or anything that we knew of.
Later, investigators inform Martha of Jean's death. She's stunned.
I don't know what triggered Martha to do it, but I don't think she would have done it if she knew he was about to die.
With no hard evidence to support Martha's allegations that Jean was a member of a violent motorcycle gang, and no way for Jean to confirm or deny his own involvement in Carla's murder, investigators begin to draw their own conclusions about what might have pushed Carla into Martha's crosshairs.
From what we saw from the evidence and from her lack of statements, I feel comfortable that there was feelings toward Bassard.
And for a woman that had endured so many heartbreaks in her life, maybe that's all she really wanted.
The outcome would have been that Martha and Jean would have been together because Carla was out of the picture.
We feel confident that there was a relationship between her and Gene to some degree. She absolutely wanted to do it so that potentially she could have him to herself.
On June 11th, 2007, Martha pleads guilty to first-degree kidnapping and second-degree murder and is sentenced to a maximum of 28 and a half years in prison. Even with the sentence, questions still linger. Like, how did a desire for love turn a selfless friend and dedicated EMT into a vicious killer?
She stood there and watched the detectives process the crime scene. And to me, that is, again, something really, really cold-blooded.
For more information on Snapped, go to oxygen.com. They were a loving In 2007, Pauline DeVore and husband Bob seemed to have everything they'd ever dreamed of.
Pauline and Bob had a very happy life together. They had a ranch. They had 700 acres. They had cattle on that ranch. They owned rental property.
It was like they had kind of both finally found the person they were supposed to be with.
But on June 15th, 2007, that dream life is ripped apart when Pauline disappears under unusual circumstances.
There are some bullet holes in the house. 2 in the gun cabinet and 2 in the kitchen window.
When investigators arrive at the DeVore's ranch, they learn something peculiar.
Bob had reported that there was a piece of furniture missing from the living room, a recliner that Pauline had often sat in.
I think that definitely puts on some alarms. I don't know of any criminals that typically go in to steal a piece of furniture.
Unless, of course, the criminals were trying to cover their tracks.
There may be some type of biological evidence, blood or something on the chair that would further us in our investigation.
Between the bullet holes and Pauline's missing recliner, investigators are beginning to believe she might not be missing.
Police looked at the possibility that maybe someone killed Pauline DeVore.
But when the CSI examines the bullet holes, they tell a different story.
The gunshots, they tested ballistically, and the angle of the shots just didn't make any sense. If you were trying to shoot at somebody, the angle didn't add up.
There was no blood. There was no signs of a struggle.
Given this new information, investigators must determine what had really happened. And where is Pauline now? In order to answer those questions, a detective sits down with her husband, Bob. Bob tells officers that he last saw his wife at 5 a.m. on Wednesday, June 13th, just before he left town on a trucking job.
And as far as we could tell, everything was normal with Polly. Right, shouldn't be anything with any problem, nothing like that. So.
Investigators ask Bob if he can think of anyone who might want to hurt Pauline. Bob draws a blank, but he does mention one theory that raises concern.
One of the first things that Bob offered up was he pointed out the fact that his wife goes to the casinos.
Pauline DeVore was known to frequent the local casino with her friends quite often. She enjoyed gambling quite a bit.
Bob adds that Pauline wasn't just there for the penny slots.
It was common for her to go collect all the rent money at the first of the month, which could be anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, and sometimes she might go to the casino and lose that much.
Since Pauline's bank bags and some cash are missing from the house, Bob wonders if the perps may have been after the rent money.
It was pretty well known what days that she collected rent, and she would have cash on her.
It's true she could have been kidnapped. Somebody might have followed her trying to get her winnings, but then it seems like, they had the bank bags full of cash in the house and they might have taken that and not her. There never was any kind of contact afterwards seeking any kind of ransom.
Bob says if the robbers had been after the money, his wife wouldn't have handed it over so easily.
We think she was fine. She's pretty fine. You damn right.
With the mystery of Pauline's disappearance only deepening, detectives decide to search the property for signs of her body.
Investigators and searchers had to utilize horses and four-wheelers and ATVs to be able to make a thorough search of the property.
Bob joins investigators in the search of the ranch.
The first reaction was to hook up the trailer and grab a horse and go ride the place out. Most of us were familiar with that place because we had been over it all with horseback.
They searched that for about a week, but had never turned up any sign of Pauline.
Investigators also looked to the local casinos for possible clues.
We went to the casinos in the immediate area that we knew Pauline frequented, and we were unable to find any surveillance video that showed her at any of these casinos.
With every passing day, Bob appears to grow more and more despondent over Pauline's disappearance.
He was bawling. I'd never seen that man cry a day in his life. And he was bawling.
With no sign of Pauline anywhere on the property, investigators ask Bob DeVore about the ranch hands on duty the night she went missing. Bob explains the only people on the ranch besides Pauline that week were her daughter Dee and an itinerant farmhand named Monica Batista.
Dee and Monica Baptista did handwork. They were doing brush hogging, clearing out some weeds and other things like that.
And according to Bob, both Dee and Monica had since left the ranch to tend to other business.
A couple of days after her mother's disappearance, Dee left the state of Arkansas to go to Mississippi to presumably work for a family friend out there.
She had been working with a crew that was doing remodeling work for some retailers in the area. They had a job in Mississippi.
She left Arkansas to go do that job, although the timing was terrible. It was something she was committed to do.
So detectives asked Bob to convince Dolores to return home early.
She didn't have any money to come back. She was depending on that paycheck to come back.
Bob gave her money to come back to Washington County. He said, Dee, what you really need to do is come home and take care of this.
On June 29th, 10 days after Pauline's disappearance, her daughter Dee Eggert returns to town.
Bob told me she had called him to check on him. He said, Dee said, they're looking for you. They want to talk to you. She gets back after driving, I think, most of the night.
Dee appeared to be very concerned and very worried about where her mother could possibly be.
According to Dee, neither she nor her fellow ranch hand, Monica Batista, had noticed anything unusual in the days leading up to Pauline's disappearance.
Her mother gave her jobs to do on the property. There was a lot of things that needed to be done, bush hogging, that kind of thing.
The day my grandmother disappeared, nothing stuck out to me about how Dee or Monica acted. It was exactly what you would expect.
Dee explains that she had heard occasional gunfire before she left, but she figured it was just some hunters on the adjacent property.
It wouldn't seem odd to hear some gunshots. You know, a lot of people shoot on their property.
As for Monica Batista's whereabouts, Dee explains she hadn't seen her since she left for Mississippi.
Monica had sort of fallen off the radar.
For more than 2 months, police in Washington County, Arkansas, have been searching high and low for missing ranch owner Pauline DeVore. While they have reason to believe Pauline might have been the victim of a deadly armed robbery, a search of both the DeVore's ranch and the casino surveillance tapes have yielded no additional evidence.
There were a lot of unanswered questions as to what could have possibly happened to her.
However, when police get an urgent call from Pauline's husband, Bob, they hope this could be the break they're looking for. When police arrive at the DeVore ranch, Bob is waiting for them in the driveway.
Bob told us that two gentlemen, one Hispanic and one white male, had come to his residence driving a darker color Honda Accord.
They had information about Pauline DeVore's disappearance. They said that her recliner had been dumped in Russellville, Arkansas, which is about an hour and a half away.
But Bob says that wasn't the only information the two men offered up.
They said that they had a gun that was used to murder her, and they wanted to sell that gun to Bob and get reward money.
Bob tells police that the notion that these two strangers would extort money from him for information about his missing wife sent him into a rage.
Bob had pulled a knife out and held the guy's throat and said, "You need to get out of here and never come back."
Unfortunately, Bob has no additional information about these two men.
Bob was unable to give us a age of the people that came out, the license plate of the vehicle, even a state of the license plate.
For the next few weeks, police scour the roadsides of Russellville for signs of Pauline's missing recliner. They also tried to get additional information on the Honda Accord the men were allegedly driving.
We searched the Department of Motor Vehicle records for all dark-colored Honda Accords, and we were unable to ever find any connection.
By the fall of 2007, friends and family are growing frustrated with the investigation's lack of forward progress.
My entire family and anybody that you run across that knew our family could tell you that we didn't think it was ever going to be finished.
We were all concerned that it would never be solved.
Nobody seems more upset by the slow pace of the investigation than Pauline's daughter, Dee.
After about the first week went by, she became very cold and distant and angry that no one had found her mother.
Then, when investigators receive copies of Pauline's finances, they get a surprising break in the case.
On June 11th, 2007, Pauline DeVore reported that Dee Eggert had actually stolen her credit card.
A couple days before the murder, Pauline had filed a report of some stolen credit cards and that there had been cash advances made and about $1,500 on those.
He obtained enough physical evidence and receipts and video. We were able to determine that Dee, her daughter, was the one who had in fact stolen the credit cards.
Why would Dee steal from her own mother? The same woman who kept her gainfully employed on the ranch.
My grandmother helped Dee a lot. She did make sure that she was able to get what she needed. As long as we had her working hard and she was trying, we were going to continue to help.
As investigators dig a little deeper into Dee's background, they realize she hadn't put all of her demons behind her.
Dee Eggert went to Northwest Arkansas to try to get her life in order at some point, where she continued using and abusing methamphetamine.
It's not just the allegations of methamphetamine abuse that detectives find disturbing. Speaking to several of the ranch hands, they discover Dee has another new, unsettling pattern.
Dee had basically taken over her mother's life. She started driving her vehicles, she started collecting money from the renters, and it just appeared that she knew that her mother would not be coming back.
According to the most outrageous allegations, that wasn't the only thing of Pauline's that Dee wanted.
There was some speculation that, or statements to the police, that there was a relationship between Dee and Bob.
There was a strong suspicion that they were having an affair. By all intents and purposes, that's what it looked like.
According to those interviewed by police, the affair had allegedly started when Dee first joined Bob on his long-haul trucking trips.
There just seemed to be a common thread that they were spending more and more time together as time passed.
Some family members witnessed them French kissing.
If these allegations are true, investigators know Dee, and perhaps Bob, might have had a powerful motive to get rid of Pauline.
So it's really, really, really sad to think about how that could have come to play and what ultimately happened to Pauline.
It's one thing that investigators found very disturbing and very eerie.
But when investigators approached Pauline's family with these allegations, they claim they couldn't be further from the truth.
There's absolutely no way there could be an inappropriate relationship between my papa and Dee. He loved my grandmother.
I wouldn't believe that would come from Bob's character at all. I never believed it. Bob was affectionate. He was affectionate to me. It doesn't mean I slept with him.
With no clear-cut way to prove these allegations, and no physical evidence tying either Dee or Bob to Pauline's disappearance, it seems like another dead end for investigators.
The longer that goes that they're missing, the more you start to feel that they're probably not going to be found again.
Finally, on April 7th, 2009, there's an unexpected break in the case. Investigators receive word that Dee's former co-worker and friend, 31-year-old Monica Batista, has resurfaced in nearby Benton County, having been arrested on an unrelated charge.
Monica Batista believed that she was in the United States illegally and that she did not have the right to work here legally, and so she had assumed a name and an identity so that she could work at a local restaurant.
Monica has been charged with criminal impersonation and is facing jail time and possibly deportation. That's when her lawyer reaches out to the investigators working on Pauline's case.
Her attorney advises the Washington County prosecutor that she has information about the disappearance of Pauline DeVore.
But Monica says her testimony will come at a price.
Monica Batista is willing to give that information over to prosecutors in exchange for some sort of immunity.
It was a cold case, and we did not have much hope of solving it, so she was granted immunity.
On April 13th, 2009, in an interview room at the Washington County Sheriff's Office, Monica Batista signs her immunity deal. Monica tells police that she knows for certain that Pauline DeVore was murdered.
She told law enforcement and prosecutors that she, along with Dee Eggert, killed Pauline DeVore on her farm.
Together, y'all planned out what you were going to do.
According to Monica, it all started when Dee moved back to Arkansas, proudly claiming that she was finally clean and sober after years of drug and alcohol abuse.
She may have come back to clean up her life, but that certainly didn't happen. She was involved with other people who were using.
Monica claims that in order to support her habit, Dee began stealing cash from her mother. And a few months later, she took it a step further.
Dee told me she stole her mom's credit card, and she took some money from the ATM. Money was mad at her because she stole her credit card.
But Monica tells police that in June 2007, Pauline caught on to her daughter's scam and threatened to turn her in to the police.
She figured out and she called the police, and actually we found in the police trap a note that said she called the police and detectives. That's the real reason that she wanted to kill her.
Dee Eggert didn't have a great relationship with her mother, and when Polly was going to report her for stealing this credit card, that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
According to Monica, that's when Dee approached her about getting rid of her mother once and for all.
She says, I don't know, we have to do something with my mom. What do you want to do? I want to kill her.
Coming up, this shocking revelation isn't all there is to the story of Pauline's disappearance.
They are couples. They are in love on each other.
And yet another twist in the case has police moving quickly.
We just received information she's trying to kill herself.
On April 19th, 2009, nearly 2 years after Pauline DeVore's disappearance, investigators have found her charred remains at a burn site on the ranch she shared with her husband, Bob, and her daughter, Dee Eggert.
We were able to recover a crown that belonged to Pauline DeVore, and then several other teeth, and then several small bones of the hand.
Thanks to the confession of Dee's friend and co-conspirator, Monica Batista, investigators believe Pauline's murder was motivated in part by an alleged affair between Bob and Dee.
It was shocking to realize that Dee was having an affair with her stepfather. It was shocking to know that she had killed her own mother.
Once it became clear that they were going to arrest her for the murder, she attempted to overdose on pills.
After ER doctors stabilized Dee, police formally charge her with murder.
Dieger was very forthcoming about the fact that Bob DeVore had staged this crime scene, had helped cover up the homicide of his wife.
Bob's primary motivation was probably the affair he was having with Dee Eggert, but he was also concerned about the finances.
The only reason she had ever started the affair with Bob DeVore was because of a deep-seated hatred she had for her mother, and she just wanted to hurt her. Looking at the totality of the circumstances, it's my belief that Dee really felt like her mother had abandoned her at a younger age, and that Dolores felt like she wouldn't have faced the drug abuse that she suffered had her mother not abandoned her.
Following Dee's confession, she agrees to testify against her stepfather in exchange for leniency.
It was determined that it would be best if we allowed her to plead to 40 years in prison. The strange thing about Dee, even though knowing that Bob had been involved in the pre-planning of the murder, the fact that he took no steps in the commission of the crime under Arkansas law made it impossible to prosecute him for the murder of Pauline DeVore.
However, investigators are able to charge Bob with criminal tampering.
When Bob DeVore arrived home and made the 911 call, that's where the hindering case began. And then the detectives show up and he starts spinning these crazy stories and yarns about possible ways that his wife had disappeared. He's hindering there.
On January 28, 2011, an Arkansas jury agrees with the state's assertions.
Bob was convicted for tampering with physical evidence, and he was sentenced to 10 years in the Arkansas Department of Corrections.
As for Dee Eggert, family members feel like the punishment fit the crime.
For Dee's participation in the murder of Pauline DeVore, she got exactly what she deserves. My mom had a helpful soul. She tried to clean Dee up. She would always make her a work in progress, trying to fix her.
She was involved. I will never, ever disagree with that. She's where she needs to be.
For more information on Snapped, go to oxygen.com.